The ICU at night has a different weight. Sounds carry farther. Machines breathe for people who cannot. Fluorescent light softens into something tired and pale, as if even the ceiling knows it is late. The nurse moves bed to bed with a tablet tucked against her ribs, shoes silent, posture neutral. Her badge reads L. Carter, RN. Nothing about it draws attention. She checks vitals at bed 7, adjusts an IV drip by a fraction, and smooths the sheet where it has folded against a patient's wrist. The man is sedated, chest rising evenly. The monitor ticks out a steady rhythm. She lingers 1 extra second, watching the waveform, then moves on. No one notices the pause. At the desk, a call light blinks twice and goes dark. It should stay lit until answered. She notes it without comment and walks down the hall. A respiratory therapist passes her, eyes on a screen, distracted. Somewhere beyond the unit, a door slams hard enough to echo. Night staff flinch, then return to their tasks. Doors slam. Hospitals are full of doors. She reaches the supply alcove and finds the crash cart parked an inch too far from the wall. It blocks nothing. It endangers nothing. She nudges it back anyway, aligning it flush, wheels locked. The motion is small, almost fussy. It also clears a clean line from the nurse's station to the stairwell door at the end of the hall. She doesn't look to see if anyone saw. Overhead, a code announcement begins, then cuts off mid-syllable. A moment later, another voice comes on. Too fast, too controlled, calling for heightened security awareness. No details, no instructions that fit the ICU. The charge nurse exhales and rubs her eyes. Great, she mutters, already turning back to a chart. L. Carter keeps walking. She checks a medication order and frowns. The timestamp is wrong by 3 minutes. Not an error, just odd. She verifies it manually, signs and administers the dose. Her hands don't shake. They never do. She counts under her breath, not numbers but breaths. Hers, not the patient's, then steps back. From the far stairwell comes a sound that doesn't belong. Metal against tile, a short scrape followed by a soft curse. It could be maintenance. It could be nothing. She adjusts the angle of a privacy curtain at bed 9, closing a gap that offers a view down the corridor. The patient inside is awake, frightened, eyes following every noise. She meets his gaze and gives a small nod. Not reassurance, just presence. The lights flicker once. Emergency power does not engage. The flicker passes. Someone laughs nervously. A monitor alarms at bed 4 and stops before anyone reaches it. That shouldn't happen. She reaches the bed anyway, checks the lead, confirms contact. The patient's rhythm is fine. She resets the alarm parameters tighter than default and moves on. Her phone vibrates in her pocket. Hospital alerts only. She doesn't look. She doesn't need to. The pattern is enough. At the nurse's station, security radios crackle with overlapping voices. The words don't line up. One says lockdown, another says stand by. The charge nurse asks for clarification and gets none. L. Carter steps closer, not to speak, just to listen. She hears what isn't said. No clear perimeter, no unified command. That means time is uncertain. She walks to the medication room and checks the lock. It holds. She notes the sight line from the door to the hall, then rotates a cart so it blocks the angle without drawing attention. She places a sharps container where it can't be tipped. She closes a door that is usually left open. "Hey," a text says, low. "You hearing this?" She nods once. "Finish your rounds," she says, voice even. "I'll cover beds 8 through 10. It's a simple offer. The tech accepts without question, relieved to have fewer steps. From the other side of the unit, a patient cries out. Not pain, fear. The sound pulls people like gravity. L. Carter reaches the room first and lowers her voice until it's almost a whisper. She dims the light. She positions herself between the bed and the door, body angled, non-threatening. She listens past the crying, past the machines, to the building itself. There it is again. Footsteps that hesitate, then resume. Not staff, not running. Purposeful. She presses the call button with her elbow and speaks softly, keeping her eyes on the door. "I'm here," she says, to the patient, to the room, to herself. The patient's breathing slows. The footsteps stop. Security finally appears at the far end of the hall. Two men moving fast, radios loud. They look past her, scanning for problems they understand. She catches one eye and shakes her head once. Not no, not yet. He hesitates, confused, then keeps moving. The emergency lights kick on at last, bathing the unit in red. The building hum deepens. Somewhere closer now, a door opens that should not. Elle Carter exhales through her nose. She steps forward, just enough to change where people stand, just enough to narrow the hall. She does not raise her voice. She does not give orders. She makes the space safer by inches and seconds, by choices so small they disappear as soon as they're made. The night is no longer quiet, but the signals are clear, and she has been reading them for a long time. The lockdown announcement finally comes through in full, too late and too broad to be useful. Doors seal with uneven timing. Some don't seal at all. The ICU's outer access clicks, then clicks again, uncertain. Staff look to the charge nurse, then to security, then to one another. The order is simple on paper, shelter in place, but the building does not cooperate. Elle Carter moves before anyone assigns her. She guides a gurney back into a room that should never be used for holding, closes the door, and tapes a handwritten sign over the glass that reads, "Procedure in progress." It won't stop anyone determined, but it will slow the curious. Slowing buys time. Time keeps people alive. A radio squawks near the nurse's station. Someone says the threat is contained. Someone else says it moved. The words overlap and cancel each other out. A security guard plants himself at the wrong corner, exposing the long corridor behind him. Elle Carter catches his eye and steps closer, lowering her voice so only he hears. "If you stand here," she says, "you block your own exit. Take the wall." She points, not commanding, just indicating. He shifts, grateful for clarity, and the corridor tightens into a funnel. Patients sense the change before staff do. Call lights ignite in clusters. A woman begins to sob, pulling at her lines. A man tries to get out of bed, insisting he needs to leave. Elle Carter moves room to room, hands light, voice steady. She does not promise safety. She promises presence. She repositions beds so doors open inward, reducing angles. She locks wheels. She closes blinds. The first real sound arrives like a dropped tool, metal striking tile closer now, followed by a sharp intake of breath that isn't pain. It's restraint. It's someone stopping themselves from running. The sound travels through vents and seams, a map only if you know how to read it. Elle Carter knows. She pulls the crash cart back into the hall and turns it sideways, creating a partial barricade that looks like clutter. She leaves space for staff to pass single file. She does not announce the change. People adjust without realizing why the hall feels narrower. Security hustles past again, louder than before. One of them slips, catches himself, curses. Elle Carter notes the cadence of their boots, not synchronized, not briefed together. She catches the charge nurse's sleeve. "We need fewer people in the hall," she says, calm. "Too much noise." It sounds like preference. The charge nurse nods and starts redirecting staff into rooms, grateful for anything that feels like a plan. A patient monitor spikes at bed 12. Not a true emergency, artifact from movement, but it draws attention. Elle Carter reaches the bed and adjusts the lead with one hand while her eyes stay on the door. She watches the reflection in the glass. A shadow crosses, then pulls back. Someone testing a line. Her phone vibrates again. She glances this time. A terse alert confirms what she already knows. The threat is inside the building. No description, no location. She silences the phone and tucks it away. A tech whispers that the stairwell door down the hall is ajar. It shouldn't be. Elle Carter nods and takes the long way around, keeping rooms between herself and the opening. She pauses at each doorway, checking locks without stopping. At the stairwell, she closes the door softly, tests the handle, then wedges a folded blanket at the base to muffle sound. She tapes another sign over the glass, wet floor, and steps back. The building shudders as emergency power cycles again. Red light deepens shadows. The hum becomes a pressure behind the ears. In that pressure, a voice carries. Low, close, speaking to someone unseen. The words don't matter. The proximity does. A security guard rushes toward the sound. Elle Carter intercepts him with her body, not blocking, just stepping into his path so he has to slow. "Patience," she says quietly, eyes flicking to the rooms behind him. He hesitates, torn between duty and the reality of fragile bodies. He turns back, jaw tight, and takes a position where she indicated earlier. He doesn't thank her. He doesn't need to. A patient's IV pump alarms, shrill and constant. The sound cuts through everything. Elle Carter silences it and resets the infusion. She checks the patient's face, ashen, eyes darting. "Breathe with me," she says, and counts without numbers. The patient follows, grip loosening. Elle Carter feels the cost in her own chest, a familiar ache she ignores. The threat moves again. This time there's no mistaking it. A door handle rattles, testing. The sound stops. Footsteps retreat, then return, closer. Someone is learning the building the hard way. Elle Carter steps into the hall and adjusts the crash cart one more inch, closing a sightline to the nurse's station. She reaches the medication room and locks it from the inside, then unlocks it and steps out, leaving it secured but accessible to those who know. Security radios erupt. Orders conflict. One voice says to clear the hall, another says hold. Elle Carter does neither. She pulls a gurney into a cross position near the junction, creating a choke point that forces anyone entering to slow and turn. She positions herself at the bend, not in the open, not hidden, present. The door at the end of the corridor opens an inch. A shape fills the gap, then withdraws. No rush, no panic. The threat is patient. That is worse. A staff member whispers that she's scared. Elle Carter nods. "Stay with your patient," she says. "I'll be right here." She means it literally. She plants her feet and waits, hands loose at her sides, eyes scanning reflections, listening to the building breathe. When the door opens again, it's faster. A figure steps through just far enough to see the hall has changed. The barricades are subtle, the angles wrong. The figure hesitates. That hesitation is everything. Elle Carter meets the moment with stillness. She does not shout. She does not run. She shifts her weight and raises one hand, palm out, not a command, an instinct older than language. The figure stops. For a second, the ICU holds its breath. Then from behind, security arrives in force, quieter now, finally aligned. The figure retreats, slipping back through the door and down the stairwell. The door slams. Footsteps recede. No one cheers, no one moves. The crisis has not ended. It has narrowed. Elle Carter exhales and feels the cost settle into her shoulders, a weight she accepts without complaint. She turns back to the beds, to the work that remains, knowing the threat will test the line again. She has kept it out, for now, by inches and seconds, by choices no report will record. And the night is not finished with them yet. The stairwell door at the end of the corridor doesn't stay quiet. It never does. Sound travels through it in fragments. Breath, fabric brushing concrete, the soft scrape of a hand finding the rail. Elle Carter hears all of it while adjusting a medication label that does not need adjusting. The movement keeps her hands busy and her posture ordinary. Security forms up near the nurse's station, 4 now, spread too wide. Radios whisper instead of shout. Someone finally learned. The charge nurse looks at Elle Carter, not asking, just checking. Elle Carter meets her eyes and tilts her head toward the bend in the hall. The charge nurse nods and repositions the team without explanation. No one questions it. A patient's blood pressure dips in room 11. Elle Carter steps inside, closes the door, and works the cuff while listening through the wall. The pressure recovers with a small adjustment. She writes the change on the board in neat block letters. When she opens the door, the corridor feels different, tighter, quieter. Good. A shadow crosses the frosted glass at the stairwell. It pauses. Elle Carter doesn't look at it directly. She watches the reflection in a stainless steel cabinet instead, tracking the movement as it leans in, then pulls back. Testing again. The threat is learning. So is she. She moves the crash cart forward half a foot, enough to create a shallow angle that forces anyone entering to expose a shoulder before a face. She positions a rolling stool behind it, wheels locked, an obstacle disguised as convenience. She leaves a clear path along the wall for staff. She does not say why. A security guard whispers that they want to push the stairwell. Elle Carter shakes her head once. "Not yet," she says low. "Let them commit." It sounds like caution. It is timing. The guard hesitates, then relays the sentiment without attribution. The decision sticks. A patient begins to desaturate in room 9. Elle Carter is there before the alarm finishes its first cycle. She increases oxygen, repositions the head of the bed, and counts breaths again, matching the patient until the numbers climb back to safe. The patient grips her sleeve. She stays until the grip loosens, then gently frees the fabric and steps out, cost paid in the tightness behind her eyes. The stairwell door opens wider this time. A figure edges out, slow, scanning. The hall reveals itself exactly as planned, cluttered, narrow, wrong. The figure freezes, recalculates. Elle Carter steps into view, not centerline, not hiding, just present enough to draw attention. Her badge swings slightly. "Nurse, ordinary. ICU is full," she says, voice even. "You need to leave." It is not a threat, it is information. The figure tilts its head, weighing her, the carts, the doors. Somewhere behind her, a monitor beeps once, steady. The figure shifts weight. Elle Carter shifts with it, mirroring without challenge, keeping the crash cart between them. Security tightens their arc silently, guided by her position rather than orders. One steps where she pointed earlier, another adjusts when she raises 2 fingers without looking back. No words, no rank, just movement. The figure takes a step forward. Elle Carter does not retreat. She angles her body to protect the nearest room, hands open, palms visible. She watches the hands, the shoulders, the breath. She waits for the tell. It comes as a slight hitch, a decision forming. She lowers her voice. "There are people who can't move," she says. "Turn around." It is a line she will not cross. The figure hesitates, caught between options narrowing by the second. Security is close now, close enough to act without rushing. The figure backs up, slow, never turning fully away. The stairwell swallows them again. The door closes with care this time, not a slam. Footsteps retreat downward, faster now. No one moves for a long beat. Then the charge nurse exhales, a sound like a valve opening. "Hold positions," she murmurs. Elle Carter nods and steps back into the rhythm of care, resetting pumps, checking lines, restoring order inch by inch. A guard approaches her, eyes searching. "You ever—" He starts, then stops. She meets his gaze and shakes her head once, not a denial, a boundary. He nods, understanding enough. The radio crackles with an update. The threat has shifted to another wing. Not neutralized, not gone. The ICU remains sealed. Elle Carter writes a note on the board, "Quiet hours," and dims the lights further. Patients settle, staff breathe. She leans against the counter for a moment, alone, and feels the tremor she's been holding back pass through her hands. She steadies them on the cool surface until they obey. Then she straightens, checks her badge, and returns to the hall. The point has been taken without anyone naming it. The line holds, and the night, narrowed and focused, prepares its next test. The update arrives without relief. The threat has not been captured. It has only moved, circling the building, testing for softer edges. The ICU remains locked down. The hum of emergency power settles into something constant, a reminder that normal systems are still down. Time stretches. Fatigue sharpens mistakes. L. Carter notices the first one before it happens. A nurse reaches for the wrong syringe, fingers trembling. L. Carter intercepts with a gentle touch to the wrist. A quiet correction. No comment. The nurse swallows and nods, shame flickering and passing. L. Carter absorbs it and moves on. A patient in room 6 deteriorates suddenly. Not because of the threat, because bodies fail regardless of chaos. Blood pressure drops, heart rate climbs. L. Carter calls for help and takes the head of the bed, directing without raising her voice. She chooses interventions conservatively, buying stability instead of chasing numbers. The patient responds. Barely. Enough. From the corridor, the sound returns, closer than before. A rapid series of steps, then a stop. The stairwell door opens hard this time, striking the wall. The figure emerges with less patience now, breath audible, posture tense. Something glints in their hand, not a firearm. Worse, in a hospital, small, fast, controllable. Security shifts forward as one. Someone whispers, "Now." The air tightens, waiting for force. L. Carter steps between the arc and the rooms, palms open, body angled to shield the door behind her. She does not draw attention to herself. She draws it away from the patients. "Stop," she says. The word is flat, not loud. It lands anyway. The figure's eyes flick to the rooms, calculating. The glint rises. A choice forms that will end badly for someone no matter how it goes. L. Carter feels the old reflex surge, the one that would end the threat quickly, decisively. She does not follow it. She clamps down, breathing through the urge, counting without numbers. "There's oxygen here," she says, precise. "There are lines and monitors. You move wrong. People die." She steps 1 inch closer, enough to claim space without provoking. Security is ready. Too ready. One misstep, and the corridor will erupt. The figure lunges, not at her, but toward a door. L. Carter pivots and takes the impact on her shoulder, redirecting momentum into the crash cart. The cart slams into the stool, metal shrieking. Pain flares white-hot down her arm. She does not strike back. She uses her weight, her angle, her balance. She pins without crushing, holds without escalating. Security closes in, controlled now, hands practiced. The glint falls and skitters across the floor. Someone cuffs the figure. The struggle ends as abruptly as it began. The corridor exhales. L. Carter steps back and the pain asserts itself fully. Her arm trembles. She keeps it still. A medic reaches for her. She shakes her head. "Later," she says. It is not bravado. It is triage. A patient monitor alarms. She turns and resets it, fingers steady despite the ache. She checks the door she protected. Still closed, still quiet. She allows herself one breath against the wall, then straightens. Security thanks her in a low voice, eyes different now. She nods once and says nothing. Reports will be written, names will be listed. Hers will be one among many if it appears at all. When the adrenaline drains, the cost remains. She feels it with every movement, a deep bruise blooming under her scrubs. She accepts it without ceremony and returns to the bedside of the patient from room 6, adjusting a line, watching the numbers climb back towards safe. The line held because she chose restraint over force, timing over speed. It held because she did not cross it, even when crossing would have been easier. The night finally begins to loosen its grip. Morning arrives without ceremony. The emergency lights click off one by one, replaced by the flat honesty of daylight filtering through high windows. The hum of backup power softens, then disappears. The ICU breathes differently when systems return, as if the building itself is relieved. Elle Carter washes her hands at the sink, slow and thorough. The water stings where it runs over the swelling in her shoulder. She adjusts her scrub top so it doesn't show. A physician pauses nearby, watching her with a look that lingers a beat longer than usual. He nods once. Nothing is said. It is enough. Security files passed to debrief. A supervisor thanks the unit. Voice, careful, official. Names are read from a clipboard. Procedures are praised. Elle Carter's name is not emphasized. She does not correct it. She signs a form when it's placed in front of her and hands it back without comment. A patient from the night sleeps peacefully, numbers steady. Another asks if it's over. Elle Carter answers honestly. For now. She adjusts a blanket, dims a light, restores the small comforts that make recovery possible. The work feels heavier in daylight, quieter without the pressure of immediate threat. The charge nurse approaches with coffee she didn't ask for. They stand side by side, watching the hall return to its normal shape as carts are moved back, signs peeled away, angles widened. "You okay?" the charge nurse asks. Elle Carter nods. Yes. It is not the whole truth. It is enough for this moment. An incident report circulates. She fills it out with care, describing events in plain language, leaving nothing dramatic behind. She writes about doors and carts and timing. She writes about patience. She does not write about herself. When she's done, she slides the paper into a tray and returns to her rounds. As the unit changes shift, new faces arrive, fresh and unaware. Elle Carter gives a brief handoff, precise and unembellished. No one asks her to stay late. No one asks for details. The night recedes into memory, heavy but contained. She changes in the locker room, moving slowly, testing her shoulder. It will bruise. It will heal. She ties her hair back, straightens her badge, and steps out into the hall one last time. A security guard catches her eye and gives a small nod, the kind shared between professionals who understand restraint. She returns it and keeps walking. Outside, the hospital looks the same as it did the night before, glass and concrete, ordinary. Elle Carter pauses at the door, takes a breath of cool air, and lets the weight settle where it belongs. Then she turns back inside, back to the unit, back to the work that does not need an audience. The alarms are silent. The patients are alive. The line held, and no one needs to know how close it came.